Unfortunately, news stories like these are becoming all too common.
Hazmat 17, confirmed residential structure fire.
2 vehicles on fire in the garage. One is an EV. We're starting hazmat.
Perimeter is complete on the third floor. No extension, light smoke.
Look at what's left behind. Almost nothing left of the car itself. The seats burned to ash. It was in the garage when it caught fire yesterday morning. It was about 8:30.
And Bruno Lucarelli says that the United States is behind other countries when it comes to EV fire education and safety.
You know, they came to us and said, why should we pass these laws? And we sent them a whole bunch of links to the Malaysia law, everything we could about what other countries are doing. And, you know, fire burns the same way it does in Milton, Georgia as it does in Malaysia. And I have reached out to the people in the Biden administration who I'm linked in with, who I dialogue with. The answers are classic government gobbledygook.
In this Don't Miss episode of the Multi-Point Inspection Podcast, Bruno Lucarelli shares crucial information concerning EV fires that dealerships and consumers alike need to know.
My name is Bruno Lucarelli. I'm the managing partner of EV Safety, Inc.
Okay. Bruno, if you just want to introduce yourself in your title, and I'll cut that up, use that later in the audio piece.
Sure. My name is Bruno Lucarelli. I'm the managing partner of EV Safety, Inc.
Awesome. As much as you want to get into your background, what led you here?
Well, I was actually selling some equipment into fixed operations in some automotive dealerships, and I became interested in the EV wave. So I'd been collaborating with different people around the world in developing solutions, and I patented a particular item. It's a barrier, and the barrier is 15 foot by 42 inches. And what the barrier does is prevent the chain conflagration when an EV goes off into spreading to other vehicles and infrastructure. And off of that, some friends of mine kind of rallied around what I was doing. One of them was the head of the Hard Rock Hotels International. The other was Elon Musk's right-hand man at SpaceX, the former head of production and engineering at SpaceX. And we've got a few other very, very experienced co-founders. And we put this company together earlier in 2024 to provide solutions, safety solutions to the lithium-ion battery market. My own background includes eBay Motors, Cox Automotive, and before I was in the automotive business, I was in the television business, working with CBS and Fox and companies like that as well. So I've got kind of an advertising marketing background, but I have surrounded myself with people that are some of the smartest people in the world at what they do, and I'm just kind of more of a spokesperson for some of the great products and ideas and engineering that my team is putting together.
Awesome. You mentioned Hard Rock. I believe you lived in Collierville. Is that right? At one point,
I lived in Collierville, Tennessee. That's correct. I was a
Memphian. Okay. Well, I don't know if you know Isaac Tigert, who started the Hard Rock Cafe. He's a Jackson, Tennessee boy. He's
oh, really?
Yeah. He's and there's some dispute even with Isaac. I think the first Hard Rock was in London, but the first one, it's either the first one in the States or the first one this side of the Mississippi,
right, was
here in Jackson, Tennessee at the Old Hickory Mall. Yeah. So we have ties to the Hard Rock, and Isaac's been back in town. You know, he was in Tibet or somewhere. He's off the grid. He lives with some monks or something, but he came back to Jackson, and they've kind of done for tourism, you know, they've done a resurgence, and you can buy Hard Rock Cafe Jackson, Tennessee shirts, which is kind of cool. I own one. So anyway, just some useless knowledge there.
There's still one down on Beale Street in Memphis.
Is it really?
Mm-hmm. Still there. Uh, so, yeah, well, of course, now the Hard Rock is owned by the Seminole tribe here in Florida, which is just up the road from where I am. So it's a different game now. They bought the
Yeah.
brand, they own everything.
Yeah.
So and
Yeah.
they're we're discussing their fire safety at their various properties with EVs. They did what a lot of people did, what a lot of hotels did. They thought, well, let's put these EVs, let's make it preferred parking. Let's put this right up front, these charging stations. And now around the country, fire marshals are saying, you've got to move that. That you cannot have that blocking the elevator, the stairs, the fire exits. So, unfortunately, to take the government money, a lot of the states, because this is a lot all federal money that's driving this, the states agreed not to let municipalities interfere with the installation so that the ramp up would be faster. Well, the fire marshals say here where your money came from or what's going on here, but you can't build you can't put a charging station where it is a hazard to the public or your facility. So now that is starting. The fire marshals are starting to step up and step in. And we've heard stories of them in Colorado forcing dealers to dig up stations and move them away from their front doors and their exits and things like that. So people need to be a little more judicious. Call your fire marshal. Even though technically you don't have to, you really need to call your fire marshal before you install a charging station.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I'm going to go back to West Tennessee here because of Blue Oval City. EVs are what everyone's talking about, either negatively or positively.
Sure.
And because of the growth, obviously if they end up making cotton balls in that factory, I've toured it. It's huge. It's definitely going to be a boon for this part of the country. And in that, the government, state government, TVA, they're popping up the charging stations a lot. I mean, Brownsville, Tennessee, for instance, because it's just down the road from Blue Oval City, there's a TVA charging station there, the Casey Jones Village here in Jackson, which is a big tourism thing here in town.
Sure.
They have 16 Tesla charging stations now over there, where it used to be all parking lot, which it is kind of in the middle. But yeah, that's interesting that you say that because they're, and again, I think it's happening a lot here simply because of Blue Oval City and a lot of the hype around that. So you're seeing them in places you wouldn't normally see them in Jackson, Tennessee.
Right.
But that is interesting because, and we're about to get into this, you see a lot in the news and some of it's erroneous, some of the things. So I kind of want to know what are the dangers? What are the dangers with the EVs? I just bought a golf cart that has a lithium battery in it. The guy just kept talking about, be careful about it catching on fire, and
Yeah, he's correct.
I almost didn't get it, but what are they prone to do?
Well, this is America, and we really beat up our cars in America. Okay, this isn't Germany where all the roads are perfect and smooth. So if you damage one of these, the undercarriage, the battery casing, you're practically guaranteed you're going to push that car into thermal runaway at some point. It might be next week, it might be next month, it might be a few months from now. So any damage to the battery casing, whether it's an e-bike, whether it's your golf cart, whether it's an SUV or even a tractor trailer, causes the cells to knock into each other. You start having fluid leaking from, one point to another inside the battery. There are a lot of reasons. You might damage the battery management system. So once that goes into thermal runaway, literally a terrorist could not come up with a better way to cause chaos, because that battery, let's say it's an average size battery on a vehicle, on a sedan or a truck, okay, not even a heavy tractor trailer battery, but that battery is going to dump thousands of liters of poisonous, lethal vapors into the environment around it. So if that happens in your garage, for instance, you open the door and you get a face full of these vapors, it could literally kill you. It will certainly disable you. And I don't mean disable you for an hour. I mean for life. It's kind of like mustard gas in World War One, right? It's kind of like the weapons that have been outlawed around the world. Chemical weapons. Well, these batteries are just big chemical weapons. If care is not taken in how they're stored and how they're shipped and how they're driven, and I mean, I personally would not charge one in my garage.
Really?
I just don't think the technology is there yet for me to feel 100% safe with charging it in my garage. In South Carolina, there was a Jaguar dealership, had one of the cars going to thermal runaway in the showroom, and somebody jumped in it and pulled it out of the showroom real quick, and it blew up outside on the lot instead of inside the showroom. But if that were inside the showroom and it were overnight and they left that car, it would certainly burn the entire showroom to the ground, no doubt about it. So these cars burn at a peak heat rate of 2,000 degrees or more. And I know there's a lot of talk going on. Oh, they burn at 5,000, 6,000. No, they don't burn at 5,000 or 6,000 degrees, but they don't need to. 2,000 degrees is plenty to pretty much destroy, melt, or combust everything within 20 feet. So you can imagine in a showroom, between the poisonous vapors and the heat, if one of these cars went off in the middle of a busy day, okay, you would have injured customers, you'd have injured employees, you would have massive damage, injuries from fire, injuries from vapor. So we have a product that we're rolling out where overnight, at the very least, we recommend you should pull the car out of the showroom at night if it's an EV and pull it back in the morning. But I know no one's going to do that. Why? Well, they don't want to clean it every day. They don't want to get the dust off it every morning. They don't want to go through that. So we do have, it's a covering system for cars while they're in the showroom. At the very least at night, you have your maintenance people use this cover system. And that way, if the car does go into thermal runaway in the showroom, it is going to really limit the damage. It's going to burn your floor. It is going to fill your showroom with smoke, things like that, but it won't burn the building to the ground. So part of what we do is we equip hotels, parking garages, dealerships with a box that has 2 of these fire blankets. They're 6 by 8 meter. They're rated to 2,550 degrees. It's funny. I was talking to some mechanics the other day of a high-end store. We go to the same microbrewery. And I said, hey, do you guys have an EV fire blanket there? They say, yeah. I said, well, where is it? Nobody could give me an answer. Actually, we don't know. Because that blanket is in the office, probably under a desk somewhere. Okay? So you need to have a rapid response system so that when first responders arrive who don't have this equipment, they have access to that equipment. They can get into your shop, onto your lot, and cover that car, stop the plume, stop the poisonous vapors from permeating into the air, into adjacent properties, and also avoid using water to put the fire out. Because it's an electrical fire. If you put water on it, it makes it worse, and it creates another toxic effluent that comes out the bottom of the car and turns your entire lot, parking garage, hotel, wherever it is, into a hazmat area that is now unusable until it gets remediated, which costs a fortune. So, it's unfortunate, but, we're addressing the automotive business here. People in the automotive business just don't want to do something until it's almost too late or until everybody else is doing it. And the fact is, the cost of one EV fire in your dealership could mean your whole campus burns to the ground, or it could be millions in damage, as opposed to spending, $20,000 and hardening your infrastructure and, hoping, to avoid that happening. So that's kind of where we're at right now in talking to dealers. We're talking to people like AutoNation and, other large groups, and they're kind of struggling because it is such a crazy concept that something as small as a medium-sized sedan could end up doing immeasurable damage to the entire facility. So if these cars, and I mean, the dealers are parking them mirror to mirror, even at Tesla dealers. Tesla doesn't understand the danger either. Not one Tesla dealer has done anything for as far as fire safety goes with these, believe it or not. So
Yeah,
that is the state of EV retail now in regard to fire safety. And you're probably aware, Brandon, that you may have seen it, but a lot of the stores are building little battery huts, cinder block battery huts, or putting shipping containers behind the store to store the batteries, because they have no direction from the OEMs whatsoever. The OEMs, their only guidance is you probably shouldn't store these batteries inside. Well, we only have one building. What do we do? So a lot of dealerships are actually building these little fire huts to store the batteries with, because they have no guidance from the OEMs, and they know if they store that battery inside and it goes into thermal runaway, it'll destroy the shop.
This question is almost rhetorical, and it's probably going to involve a lot of opinion. But did we get the cart before the horse when it comes to EVs? And it seems like the push to get the one, which is a different topic. I'm not sure that the public wants them as much as we were led to believe that they want them. And so we've rolled all this out, right? And of course, again, I'm 45 minutes away from Louisville City. And of course, the rumor mill runs rampant with, is it going to stay an EV production facility, or are they just going to end up producing F-150s there? Because it's the Wild West, really, when it comes to this. I mean, so again, I'll ask, did we get the cart before the horse, especially with safety, including safety, I guess?
I think the problem is we put the cart before the horse with lithium ion battery technology, okay, before they started putting it in cars. As one Professor Paul Christensen, who's probably the smartest guy in the world on EV battery, lithium ion, as he said, we're too far down the road to do anything about it now. Okay, so the technology of lithium ion has been causing problems long before they, started putting them in cars. So it really doesn't have anything to do, electric cars, the first cars were electric, right?
Right.
So they've been making electric cars for 120 years. They're going to come up with a better technology. They're working on sodium and things like that to replace major chemicals inside these batteries to make them safer. But everybody keeps talking about the demise of the EV. If you're watching Fox News, no one will ever buy an EV again. If you're watching MSNBC, everybody's going to buy one. It's really ridiculous. The truth's always somewhere in the middle. No. And the fact is that this is the year that companies like Comcast and Verizon and Amazon are electrifying their fleets. So the consumers, the reason that consumers are not buying EVs, notice that they're also not buying any other $48,000 cars.
True.
Okay. The price point on the current EVs, everybody that was buying a $50,000 EV has bought one. And very few $50,000 cars are moving. Okay. So people that were buying the 2024, Highline vehicle have bought their car. Now, when you look at the sales of the EVs that are under 30,000, okay, if you've got one, you can sell it. The problem is a lot of brands don't have an under $30,000 EV. Okay. GM always had a cheap EV and they sell the heck out of them. Okay. BYD is going to come to this market from China. They've already got plants in Mexico, and they're going to start flooding this market even with the tariffs, they're going to start flooding this market with EVs that you can buy do the 4 squares at the dealership, and they're going to come in at your $149 a month price. And that's all consumers care about. Can you meet my monthly price? They don't care if that car runs on puppy blood. So people buy on price and convenience. The idea that there are people saying, oh gosh, that's an EV. No, I'm not buying that. Hey, if you meet their monthly price and it gets them to work and gets their kids to soccer, they're buying it. They don't care what it runs on. Okay. So when, and now manufacturers have woken up, even Tesla keeps going back and forth, but even Musk has acknowledged we need $25,000 EVs if we're going to grow this market. Okay. The highline market always existed, always will exist. There'll always be, people buying expensive cars. But the American automotive industry just stopped making cars under 35,000 of any kind. And then they complain about a slowdown. So EVs were caught up in the general malaise of manufacturers making vehicles too expensive, including EVs. So isolating the EV out and saying, the EVs are dead. No, just the people that want to pay $60,000, $70,000 for an EV, they've topped off. Okay. But the $25,000 EVs are selling just fine. And, the more of them flood the market, the more people will buy it. And that's been proven in other countries, in Australia and Europe. BYD's flooded the market with $18,000 EVs, and they sell like crazy. They can't keep them in stock. So people don't care what a car runs on. It's kind of crazy. But, at the same time, no offense against my friends at Ford and Chevy, but it's great to have a big EV truck, but towing something really heavy really drains the battery, and they haven't figured that out yet. So if I'm going to be towing a boat, I'm not going to go with an EV yet. Yeah. I'm sure they'll figure that out, okay, eventually. But right now, these batteries don't store enough power, in my opinion, to be able to tow something super heavy for long, long periods. And you've got, 60,000 U.S. charging stations, but, at any point, I don't know what percentage, 20% aren't working. So it's very hard to have the confidence to tow that boat from, Miami to Atlanta, mapping out the charging stations, right? Because you are going to have gaps of, 100 miles in between there. And if you're towing a boat, you might need that 100 miles.
Right. Going back to the fires or the dangers, I heard a story, and I never verified it, of a shop that burned down because a technician left an EV on the lift overnight. Is that an issue with EVs? You can't leave them. Of course, you've said take them outside.
Mm-hmm.
I
wouldn't leave them in a shop overnight.
Yeah, I didn't know if
And
there was
by the
any.
way, I have 2 Tesla dealerships within 15 miles of my house. Both have had a fire in the last 18 months. In both cases, they were vehicles in for service. Why is an EV in for service, right? These are supposed to be service-free vehicles, right? Part of the big concern in the automotive industry, the front end of the house is making a lot of money, but, now all we're doing is putting wipers and tires on it, right? Even the brakes self-regenerate. So if an EV is in for service, it means it's got some kind of warning light or it just stopped working, all right? That vehicle is especially dangerous because until you find out what's wrong with it, whatever's wrong with it could lead to thermal runaway much more than a new car. So if there's something wrong with an EV, if it's in for service, don't put it inside anywhere and park it away from other vehicles or use our barrier when you park it to mitigate any conflagration that might happen. If you don't have enough room to separate those cars, then you need a barrier, and we sell the only one in the world. So, not to plug my own product, but if someone else has an answer, I'm willing to hear it. We also sell fire curtains for service bays, but even with the fire curtain surrounding your service bay, I would not leave that car in the shop.
So does that barrier, does it just kind of fit over like a car cover? Like your old.
No, no. Our barrier actually is literally a standalone barrier that you park the car between two of them, and then as you know, when the car conflagrates, it doesn't, it keeps the heat, it keeps the fire inside that box, in between. So now it only takes 60 seconds or less for an EV to light an adjacent EV if that next car is within 3 or 4 feet. So, in other words, in 20 minutes, you'll have 20 cars or 40 cars if they're parked on either side before the firemen arrive. And let's face it, if a fireman gets there and there are 40 burning EVs, they're just going to sit back and watch it burn.
Yeah.
Watch your dealer lot burn, because there's nothing they can do once that happens. The water does not put out a lithium-ion fire. A lithium-ion fire creates its own oxygen. So we have a case here in Florida. It's gotten kind of famous, and I know the Hollywood fire chief. Somebody was using their Tesla to pull a boat. The Tesla slid back into the ramp, into the water, which caused the battery to go into thermal runaway. And the fire chief just left a couple of guys there until the car stopped burning underwater. It was sitting in 8 feet of water, and it burned for another 4 hours underwater.
That's crazy.
Okay, until they could go near it, because they can't pull it out at that point. I mean, there's too much going on. I mean, the water surrounding that car was probably 600 degrees. So there's nothing you can do. So, they waited for it to stop burning, and then they hooked up a chain and they towed it out and they brought it to a salvage yard. But by the way, while that was burning in the intracoastal, it released an untold amount of carcinogens and heavy metals and terrible things into the environment. So it's another reason why you don't want to put water or put them in water, because, and I know there are these crazy companies, they lift up the car, they throw it in a big trailer full of water. All right, well, now you just created thousands of gallons of tainted water. What are you going to do with that? Where are you going to put it? So throwing a blanket on the car tamps down the vapor cloud. Okay. That vapor cloud has all kinds of heavy metal, terrible poisons in it. It tamps down the vapor cloud. You could throw water on top of the blanket to cool the thing down, but once it gets to a certain point, after they throw a blanket on it, the firefighters will drag it away from everything with a chain, put it on a flatbed truck, and get it to a salvage yard where it will very likely reignite down the road. So the salvage yard, they keep the blanket on, and then the salvage yard sits on it and separates it, because they fully expect that car to reignite at some point. My friend owns a salvage yard in New Jersey, and they've got Teslas reigniting, 3-4 weeks after the car is dropped at the salvage yard.
It's a brave new world, isn't it?
Well, we just have to be aware of the dangers. I mean, when they started using gasoline, buildings and barns were burning down left and right. Until people started figuring out you should keep a fire extinguisher around. So there's always a ramp up period when you deal with, a new kind of fuel. Maybe they'll figure out how to stop hydrogen from blowing up. I doubt it. But, I don't think there's much behind the hydrogen movement, because hydrogen is such a dangerous explosive gas. And by the way, hydrogen is the chief the chief molecule that these batteries put off. So it's about 30% hydrogen when a battery goes into thermal runaway. And we know how explosive hydrogen is. So that's kind of what's behind these fires, these flames, these, let's say you leave that car in a shop overnight. Well, if it goes into thermal runaway, it's going to fill your shop with hydrogen, and something's going to spark it. And the wind, it's literally going to be an explosion blowing out your windows and doors.
Right. You mentioned the Chinese and what they're doing, and their EVs, they're dominating, man. What are they doing, or what are they saying that they're doing as far as safety? You had mentioned before we went on air about what other countries were doing. Mm-hmm. Do they have better safety measures
They
than we do
do.
at this
As
point?
far, yes, they do. They have, for instance, in China, Taiwan, Malaysia, they have federal regulations that require things like blankets, fire blankets inside parking garages. Anywhere there's an EV in Malaysia passed a law earlier this year, and that law says that for every from 1 to 5 charging stalls, you must have one blanket for each group of 5 stalls. So if you've got 20 charging spaces, you must have 4 blankets on hand. The fire marshal must tell you where to put them, because just like here, they were just people just installing them in crazy places. You know what I mean? That were blocking exits, stairs, etc. So now the fire, the fire community has stepped up in Malaysia, and the government has made it a federal law. So January 1st, if you don't have blankets installed at your charging stations, you're going to get fined. You're going to have to turn off your electricity. So Malaysia stepped up, and they did what is already being done in other countries. And interestingly enough, here in the U.S., in Milton, Georgia, the fire chief and I have had multiple conversations. Very smart guy. And he actually went to the town, and they are going to pass a law, I think this month, a code saying that you must put fire blankets at every charging station in that city. Now, they don't have many charging stations. They're a small, affluent community, but they also have a lot of malls, and these places are outside where people are pushing baby strollers, these charging stations, etc. And they acknowledge this would be a mass casualty event if we don't have the right equipment. And the right equipment right now, the only thing we have to go on is throw a blanket on the car. Okay, stop that poison plume, stop the spread of the fire to adjacent infrastructure and vehicles. You throw that blanket on, it cools things down. There are 2 fires when an EV goes off. There's the battery, and then there's the vehicle. Okay, the upper fire, the lower fire. Well, the blanket takes care of the upper fire. Nothing can put out the lower fire. Nothing that we have that exists can put out an EV battery fire. So that's why they evacuate it. It's still burning when they get it on the flatbed, and they evacuate it. It's still smoking. It's still smoldering. So these crazy people have like crazy gadgets. Oh, we're going to slide something under the car. It's going to spray water up. Well, then they realize that the 2,000-degree heat melts the tires, and the vehicle collapses onto whatever it is that's under there. And now that thing is stuck under there until they pull the car away, and it's not doing anybody any good. So you should not, waterless firefighting is the preference now to avoid the hazmat situation of all of that tainted water. So, and it's why private industry has to provide these blankets. And that's what Milton, Georgia has decided. And all of the other towns in Georgia will follow suit. If you install a charging station, you need to have some responsibility. And right now, there are over 60,000 charging stations in this country, and there is not one piece of fire safety gear at one of them, at any of them. So what's gotten out of hand is not the creation or the production of the cars. What's gotten out of hand is the fact that the federal government, the state governments have ignored the danger of the charging stations, because when the car is charging, it is most likely to have a transient event, okay, a voltage surge. And if there's any kind of defect or damage to that battery, it's going to express itself during charging. So charging stations are where most of these fires have been occurring, okay, at least anecdotally, what we see in other countries. And yet in this country, not one requirement for any kind of fire safety equipment whatsoever.
Okay, I know that like the OEs will have dealerships do certain things, if they're going to sell EVs in like a charging station, obviously. As well.
Mm-hmm.
Are the OEs getting on board with the safety issue? Are they having that?
No,
they're not.
No. But it's encouraging. General Motors has reached out to our company, and we've been to Detroit and sat down with their safety team. But that focus has been mostly on their factories. We are trying to steer that conversation to the retail network. But, in defense of the OEs, if it's a defense, they've already asked the dealers to do so much that, now, of course, they're pulling back a little bit. Maybe you don't have to do all that much. But the only guidance from OEs has been, okay, this, from my discussions with dealers, is, hey, don't put these batteries inside the building. Don't store them in the building if you can help it, which the fixed ops director already knows that, but no, they haven't given them any guidance. We hope that we can help in that. As I say, it's pretty inexpensive to outfit your dealership with our equipment. Less than $20,000 if you're a medium-sized dealer to, at least harden your infrastructure enough to maybe save the whole place from burning to the ground.
Yeah.
Vispirio Performance Academy offers custom-tailored solutions for service advisors and leaders. We allow you to select exactly what you want based on your store's needs. After taking our customized learning path survey, we use those results to tailor a learning path specifically for you. You'll have access to our complete learning library, and you can test what you've learned with our knowledge checks. And for managers, our easy-to-use admin dashboard allows you to easily see current activity from your team and access reports quickly. Vispirio's Performance Academy promotes advisor and manager engagement and communication by including the manager after every concept an advisor completes. Vispirio also allows users the ability to add custom dealership assets and processes that all live in one location. To get a look inside the Performance Academy or to get your team started today, go to Vispirio.com. That's Visperio.com.
Yeah, I mean that seems like a no-brainer. And I was going to ask you without really asking you the cost of that, because that's been a big sticking point with a lot of the dealerships. I mean, profits are, it's thin profit margins as it is, and then this, the EVs with just how you work on them and everything else, it throws a whole new wrinkle into how everything has always been.
Yes.
And there's limited amount of funds to, it's almost like it's catch-22. It's like, well, if you, I don't care what the market share is, if you don't get in the game, you're obviously, the number of units you'll sell is zero.
Mm-hmm.
But then, there's a large investment in doing that. So, an inexpensive safety measure, it seems like a no-brainer.
Well, it's unfortunately, as so many people have said to us, gee whiz, you guys are going to really kill it once some hotel burns to the ground and, 100 people die, or once some dealership blows up and the customers are all poisoned in the showroom. We're trying to avoid that.
Right.
Okay. We don't want that ever to happen. And unfortunately, it just happened in South Korea. They got 23 people dead in a lithium battery factory. Why? Well, now we've seen the videos, and they're dead because the employees had no training. And we have a training program. We have a training certification, and we're not KPA. This is different. We're not training techs, okay? Every employee on the lot needs to be aware of what to do when one of these cars starts emitting vapor. One employee that doesn't know what to do, and this is what you see on the video in Korea. In Korea, one battery pack this big, okay, went into thermal runaway. The employee just ran away from it, and then another employee grabbed a fire extinguisher, which caused the fire to exponentially multiply. And as he sprays that battery pack, it explodes. The smoke covers, the vapor covers the camera, and that's it. You don't see any more. And very likely the two people in that video are probably dead. So the lot tech the service advisors, the salesmen, the managers all need to know what to do when one of these cars goes into thermal runaway, because one person not knowing what to do puts everybody else in danger, the customers and the employees. So that is something that we have really, they're online courses. They're inexpensive. They're taught by one of our co-founders is the #1 EV fire trainer in the world on the internet. He has almost 4 million views. His videos are used in 40 different countries to train people on EV fire safety. And put the scenario in your head. There's a bunch of guys sitting around a showroom, and all of a sudden they smell something weird, and a little bit of smoke starts coming out. You know what these guys are going to do. They're all going to keep playing games on their phone. Yeah, somebody call the fixed op. Yeah, the car's smoking a little. What they need to do at that moment is immediately evacuate the area. And if it's not burning, if it's not hot, get the fire blanket out of the box and, throw it on top of that car and get the hell out. Okay. Mm-hmm. If they have time to even do that, everybody has to run like hell away from a thing. Now in South Carolina, they saw the car smoking in the dealership. Somebody jumped behind the wheel. They opened the doors and they got it outside, and it blew up outside in the parking lot. Okay. I don't recommend that, because if that car blows up while you're driving it, you're going to get very injured. You know what I mean? Yeah. Here's the thing about dealerships. 99 out of 100 vehicle fires at a dealership, they don't call the fire department. Okay. Everybody knows, grab an extinguisher, get over there and put it out. And 99 out of 100 times they could put out that engine fire. Okay. With a fire extinguisher, with a couple of them. Everybody runs over there, right? They don't call the fire department. I speak to firefighters. How many times have you been called to a car dealership? Almost none. But we know that car dealers have these little deflagrations. They have these little fires all over the place. That's, I think, the problem, is that dealers think of a vehicle fire as, that's why I have fire extinguishers. We have, once a month one of the. What's the big deal, right? But if one of these EVs goes off, it's a very big deal. And yeah, you're going to have property damage, but even more so, you're going to have injury. You're going to have people that are hurt or maybe killed, And by the way, if there's a customer in that showroom and they're not immediately evacuated and they breathe any of that vapor, they're going to have a massive lawsuit. You will be ruined. Okay. Because it won't just be one customer. It'll be everybody in that showroom, your employees, everybody that breathes that stuff. They're going to be permanently disabled. It's a COPD that is the worst of the worst. Okay. If they get exposed to hydrogen fluoride or hydrofluoric acid, if they try to use water, it stops your body from processing calcium. It's a terrible way to die. So to ignore it, the bottom line is, lack of knowledge of the safety issues is not a shield to a jury. So we talk about liability, and we're just shocked that these dealers, they've got a $40 million dealership, that they don't understand that they will lose everything if they don't take the proper steps, okay, to avoid that.
If dealerships are this ill-equipped, I don't own an EV. I just bought a new truck, and it's a gas burner. What about the consumer? Are they being educated at the dealership, or what?
No, not at all.
Because that can happen at home as well, right? I mean, we're talking about dealerships in the lot, but I mean, that's a whole new thing once you take the car home, right?
Yeah, we had a Mercedes last year burn a house to the ground in Jacksonville here, a Mercedes EV. There's a video online of a firefighter approaching a garage where there was an EV in thermal runaway, and the entire door of the garage blows off and almost decapitates him, knocks his hat off. He literally ducked just in time because that garage filled with hydrogen. So the PSI against that garage door was thousands of pounds, and it blew off and literally flew all the way to the street. like a double garage door. No. And, as I say, it's our stuff is not that cheap. To, let's say that the kit that we're selling dealers to cover these cars inside the showroom, well, that's going to cost a couple $1,000s. I mean, certainly it's worth it, but it's worth it to a dealer, to somebody that owns a $60 million business. For a customer, that's a big expense. So, we don't have a product, for $200 to sell to a customer to help with that. So my advice is, don't park the car in the garage. If you install a charger, do it in the driveway. If you install it in the garage, make sure the car has enough room to charge outside. Colorado, places like that, you've got to put a sticker on your mailbox to indicate you have an EV. In Milton, Georgia, the town I mentioned previously that's passing all these great laws, they're actually coming up with stickers that go on the garage. It's like a big sticker you put on the jamb of the garage door. And they're encouraging everybody that owns an EV. And they've got a high EV penetration because they're an affluent community. And as you know, in Georgia, it's also a big EV production state. So
spot that for me. Is that what'd you say, that Milton?
Milton
is that in a suburb of Atlanta? Where is that?
Yeah, suburb of Atlanta.
Okay, I want to look into that. Yeah.
Well, you'll see it in the news. I think they're voting on it next week.
Okay, cool. Bruno, is there anything that I didn't ask you or that we haven't talked about that you wish we had?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned consumer awareness, because, when they sell a gas car, they assume, like, they don't tell somebody, hey, don't park this thing on leaves. It'll blow up if you do, that kind of thing. They just assume that everybody has common sense, right? So I would like to see a little more consumer awareness, because in other countries there are terrible incidents where, families, kids, people have been killed because people just don't understand how quickly. You don't have any time when one of these cars goes off, whether it's just starts smoking or whether you see flame, you don't have a lot of time, okay, to get either extract somebody from the vehicle or get out of the car yourself. Tesla actually has an emergency latch on the door. So if the battery dies, you can get out of the car. But that lady that's Mitch McConnell's sister-in-law drowned in her Tesla down in Kentucky. She backed into a pond. She was probably drunk, but she was calling people saying, I can't get out. I can't get out. The battery is dead. Well, they didn't, when she bought the car, nobody showed her there's a latch right on the door you can open your door with. Mm. So she died needlessly. So yes, I consumer awareness really is half the battle. And unfortunately, we don't even have dealer awareness. We don't even have retail awareness. We don't even have industry awareness. So, education and awareness, we would love to see more of that.
You said you've been in talks with GM. Is that looking promising with the OEs, or people starting to look for solutions? I mean, surely they will, right? If they're going to keep selling these things.
Yes, of course. And again, it's going to be, they had that close call with a Jag dealership in South Carolina. They've had other close calls. But unfortunately, yes, it's going to be the dealer network, the franchisees, the dealer boards, the national boards. Once there are multiple incidents in dealerships and people get hurt and places burned to the ground, and, that's when they're going to start turning to the OEs and say, look, we're a franchise. You're doing nothing. We're a franchisee here. You're supposed to be providing guidance on this. So, yes, it's kind of like the old days when we had that horrible theater fire, and then they said, oh, well, now you've got to have fire sprinklers in every theater. Why did we wait until a theater full of people died to do it? Right. But unfortunately, that's probably the way it's going to be. I mean, I just had a great conversation with a gentleman in Northern California that reached out, and he says, look, I work with fixed ops directors and they should know about this. I want to sell your product. I want to, rep you to these dealerships, and we'll probably do something with him. But his reasoning was, look, I'm friends with all the fixed ops directors. I don't want to see them get hurt. I don't want to see these dealerships burn to the ground, because in the end, who's going to get blamed? It's going to be the fixed ops director. Okay. Those GMs that keep saying, oh, this is too expensive. No, we don't want it. When there's an incident, whoa, well, that happened in the back end of the store, right? Anything that has to do with the battery or a car blowing up, it's always going to land on the fixed ops director. But the GM has to pony up the money to make it right. So, And again, we get calls from AutoNation, companies like that. They have safety directors. They're well organized. They are looking into this. They are looking for solutions. But that is less than 10% of the dealerships in this country are owned by these big companies. We're mostly a mom and pop business, 2 stores, 5 stores, 12 stores, not 150. So, these 5-store, 10-store groups, they don't have a safety director.
Yeah.
So there's no one to talk to about it. So it's slow going, and we hope that we're going to be at the NADA convention. We're fighting to get a booth there. It's been sold out for years. So we're going to be at NADA. We just hope we have a booth. That's all.
There you go. Yeah. Well, man, this has been very interesting. And it's really piqued my interest. And I'm going to start looking at Milton, Georgia here and watch them closely.
We're very happy that we were able to provide them with the information. They came to us and said, why should we pass these laws? And we said, well, we sent them a whole bunch of links to the Malaysia law and all the, everything we could about what other countries are doing. And, fire burns the same way it does in Milton, Georgia as it does in Malaysia. So and I have reached out to the people in the Biden administration who I'm linked in with, who I dialogue with. And, the answers are classic government gobbledygook. Oh, that's a very important thing. And we've had meetings with major officials about, but nobody's doing anything. In the NEVI law, you simply need to say, hey, by the way, you need to put some fire safety equipment. Okay, it's less than 1% of the cost of the entire site plan to do it. Why aren't you doing it?
Awesome. Bruno, I'm going to shift gears for a second. We'll end this thing, but you've got some pipes on you, man. Talk about music a little bit.
Yes, I was a professional musician. I have a lot of friends that got famous. Not me, but they did. When I saw how good other people were, I realized I need to go do something else. But I have played with and sang with, a lot of phenomenal people, and I'm very proud and great memories. And I still sing down here in Florida. I have a little Frank Sinatra show that I do sometimes at weddings and stuff. So it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of great musicians here in Southern Florida. I moved from Asbury Park, New Jersey. So I moved from a major musician scene down here to Broward County, Florida. But I'm very pleased at how great, of course, Miami sells more records than Nashville. So there should be great musicians around here, and there are. And I've been lucky enough to play with some of them. So, I enjoy it. Hey, you can find me on YouTube. I got all kinds of videos people put up.
Cool.
of me singing. But, it's fun. It's a fun hobby. And, as you know, if it's something that, you've got a little talent for, then you have to do it, right?
That's right. Yep. Gets in your blood, man.
Yes. And I will. I promise I'm coming to Nashville soon. And my friends, the McKendries, they now run the Monday night at the Bluebird. So, that's the big night. And the gentleman died that was doing it for 30 some odd years, and they chose Kevin and Yates McKendry to take it over because they're two of the most talented people in town, and they're wired to every musician. So the McKendrys have really turned it into taking the Monday Night the Bluebird to the next level. So it's a lot of
That's the open mic, right?
yeah, that's the open mic. It's where Garth
Yeah.
Brooks and Johnny Cash and everybody starts.
Yeah, man. I've played that before. I've done that
There you
once.
go.
I was scared to death, but yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of big producers show up. It's where all the new talent comes.
We used to crash it, man, when I was in my just out of my teens. I was in my early 20s. Of course, we were a bunch of Nirvana type alternative music, and we dressed the part. But that movie with River Phoenix had just come out, the thing called Love, which is based around the Bluebird. And so we wanted to see all the things in the movie, and we used to crash the Bluebird, not on the open mic nights, but just during the weekend. And the girl that ran the door, if there was room, she let me sit on the windowsill behind her. And I remember we showed up. I don't know if you remember this. When Vince Gill shaved his head, that was a big deal. I just remember that. He shaved his head for some reason. And of course, they have the little speaker out there that plays where you can hear who's playing in the round.
Yeah. Yep.
We walked up and heard this sweet, beautiful voice. I'm like, dude, that's Vince Gill. Sure enough, we couldn't get in that night, but we were looking through the window, and sure, shaved head Vince Gill, he had dropped in because I think he was married to one of the sweethearts of the rodeo at the time, and she was doing it in the round, and he came and sat in with her. But that's just awesome, man, to be able to, drive 2 hours down the road and just go see Vince Gill on a whim. You just never know who you're going to run into.
Yeah, that's why Memphis, Nashville, New York City, even little Asbury Park where I grew up, that's Bruce Springsteen, is always popping in. And because he's there, a lot of other great musicians are always hanging around. And we get the New York, it's only an hour from New York City. So we get a lot of great people that come visit, and you never know who you're going to meet. It's Jack Nicholson, Danny DeVito, all these famous people are from the area. So they hang around, and so it's fun. And of course, now I'm here in the Miami area, and of course it is just a cavalcade of celebrities here all the time.
Oh yeah.
So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, Bruno, I appreciate the time, man. This has been great. And let me stop this thing and we'll let it upload.